Bonjour. Hello.
Bonjour.
Welcome to the 25th edition of Internationale Kurzfilmtage Winterthur. It's my great honor to be here with Marie Losier, filmmaker and artist from France, but also from New York. We will go through her work today and with a lot of illustration as well of her work, which is not only related to film, but also related to drawing, to installations, to sculptures as well a bit. So it's a very interesting body of work, and I hope we will have time to go through this flourishing work. Maybe to start with, just to give you a little background of Marie Losier, she was in New York for 23 years, and she was there for her studies at first, and then she started to work as a programmer for the Alliance Française in New York. We will also go back to this, but just as an introduction, I give a few elements of your life. And you started to direct a lot of films there, films with friends, films with artists, with filmmakers, with musicians as well. And this lasts until now. And you directed a lot of short films, but also 4 feature films, 3 feature films. And for those of you who were here 3 days ago, you could have seen already a few of the portraits that Marie did throughout her career. And this afternoon, we will have also a program at 2 p.m. where you can discover other works, among which her latest film, Felix in Wonderland. Your films have been already screened in a lot of festivals, but also in a lot of art places, art spaces, museums. You had a retrospective in MoMA in 2018, and also at Le Jeu de Paume in Paris. And recently you also had an installation space at Galerie Anne Barrault in Paris as well, and a lot of other things related to your work that we will go through today. So maybe as a beginning, and so that the people can know you better, can you tell us a little bit about how come you went to New York and what happened there when you were there? You studied literature in Nanterre first, and then you decided to move to New York, and you were quite young.
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you for being here, and thank you, Delphine, for inviting me. I always loved cinema more than anything in the world, and skipped a lot of classes to go to films rather than classes. I grew up in the countryside, and then I would go to Nanterre, which was a university close to Paris, where I studied American literature. I was obsessed with American cinema, in the sense that I was looking a lot of westerns, slapsticks, comedy, film noirs, all the classics of cinema. And then I got a grant to do an exchange between France and New York in the University of Fine Arts. And I did got the grant for 1 year. So we did an exchange, but I never wrote my thesis, and I never came back to France. I was 19. And I stayed in New York 23 years that way. And I did some equivalents to go to the Fine Arts for 4 years, doing painting in New York City. And that's how cinema came along the way. But that's how I went to New York. I mean, I was obsessed with New York, from the music to the cinema. And I found home there. It's a place that, for me, all the work that you will see and everything came from. And it's very recent that I've been living in Paris. I'm not from there. Everything is new. And it's very new that I make work and make films that are related to subjects in Europe and not New York City. So, voilà.
And so maybe, shall we start with your first film that you directed, like the very, very first film that you did in the
Fine Arts,
yeah.
This film called The Touch Retouched, and when I graduated from Fine Arts, I didn't show paintings, and I built a movie theater where I became a character. I decided to call myself Lula Nazarov, which was the name of my mother. a Russian name. And I decided to enter many films that I loved, from Bergman to Dreyer to many other films. And I inserted myself into films. And I also did a whole series of photos where I inserted myself with Bogart, Jimi Hendrix, everyone that I loved, and put myself into photos so it didn't look like I never aged, which is great. So the first one is the touch retouch, which I did really in my kitchen at the time. I had no idea how to make films.
So, I want to tell you something. The first time we met, you were sitting in the cloakroom.
David, will you please excuse me? It's a consultation. It's somewhat touchy. I'll be with you in a second. Make yourself comfortable.
Yes?
You were sitting in the cloakroom of the hospital, crying. I suppose it's hardly the thing to tell you, but I fell in love with you.
Which wine glasses, Mama? We're going to have white wine. Where are they? Second shelf to the right. Okay.
I was in love with Bergman, but mainly about Elliot Gould.
So that was you said your graduation film. Did you graduate with it?
It was difficult.
How did the professors
They
see
didn't
the
understand
work?
anything I was doing. Yeah.
So you had to explain them.
I
why
didn't explain.
You just.
I just did it.
Okay. And how did you come up with this idea of including you in the film, working with found footage, the editing also already?
I mean, it was at a time where there was not even like Premiere or editing things, so it was all done from VHS tapes where I would copy and tape to insert myself into films. And there were a series of films, so there were not just this one, but many. But also photos and posters, and like I made a fake movie theater with this actress who never died.
So it was also already an installation.
Yeah,
Okay.
And I asked friends to write letters, love letters or work letters, fake, on different kind of papers, where they could invent stories about Lula and all the love stories she had. I had fun.
After this film, after your studies, how could you continue staying in New York, living, making a living?
I was illegal for many, many years. I never came back to France, so when you don't come back, you're not checked at the border. But I started working at different jobs, as always, in New York, and I worked for a theater director called Richard Foreman, who is very important to me, and I made his props and his sets for his plays. And Richard, in a way, worked very closely with his very close friends, Jonas Mekas, who is a Lithuanian filmmaker. It's very important for his work, but also very important for New York City, as he created a movie theater called the Anthology Film Archive. At the Anthology was next to the theater where I worked. And so the relationship between both the theater, Richard Foreman, and Jonas Mekas became very important to me. And I hung out a lot in the movie theater, where I met a lot of filmmakers, musicians, artists, with whom I became friends. And I started discovering experimental underground cinema, which was shown there all the time. And there was a real cross between different medium of art. In a way, little by little, I worked in a little cinema, also a cine club that I did with friends for 10 years called Ocularis, where we would invite a lot of artists to show films. And that's where I learned how to program films, but also that's where I met many of the people that I made films with after. And without knowing I would ever make films, I didn't think it was for me. That's how I started. So I didn't have the school behind. And in a way, by being so naive and so excited to make work, it kind of allowed me to do what I do today, to find a form.
And regarding this, to find a form, how did you find the Bolex camera? I don't know if it was your only work in VHS.
That's the only work.
Not in Bolex, basically.
Yeah, exactly. Well, love stories are really good in life because I had a great love affair with a filmmaker, And when we broke up, he gave me a Bolex, which is the best gift for a breakup. And the Bolex is the one I still make films with. And I had no idea how to use it. I took the Bolex to this little place called the Millennium Workshop in New York City, which doesn't exist anymore. But there was this beautiful old man at the entrance of the place called Mike Kuchar. And Mike Kuchar is the person who taught me how to use the Bolex. And Mike and his brother, they're twin brothers, are very, very important to me. They're filmmakers. George passed away, but Mike is still alive. And they made films together since they were 6 years old. And they're really, really wonderful. They came from drawing and painting, like maybe you know Crumb, the cartoon, and they came from that, and then they made films that in a way resemble that. And they made a living by doing porn drawing for certain magazines and teaching or screening films on the side. So I learned from Mike Kuchar how to use the Bolex, and the first film that I made was without thinking with Mike Kuchar, a portrait on Mike called Bird Bath and Beyond. That was the first film I ever made, and his brother, twin brother, George, saw the film and said, I want a portrait. And so I made a film with George Kuchar, which was called Electrocute Your Stars. And that's how it kind of started, that without knowing I was doing painting portraits, and then I started making film portraits. In a way, they're very close in sensibility of how from friendships it became film. And so that means they were never made by me knowing or wanting to look for someone to make a film about someone particularly. It's because of the encounter and the friendships that the film developed. A lot of time is hanging out, eating and talking and laughing, but it's also always creating. And I think the process of creating, which took always years, it was never a short way of making films, was about these friendships that motivated me and gave me the love of the people to explore. Often they were quite eccentric people, so they were always ready to do anything and play with me. And I think that also is a way that I learned how to make films in the way that I do today.
So, for example, this first film that you did with the Bolex camera, how did you plan it ahead, and how did you manage, you arrived in their place and you started to film, or did you install because with the Bolex camera there is also something specific regarding the sound and of course the light. So how did you manage that when you had never really experienced it before?
I mean, with the Bolex, for those who don't know, it's a 3-minute roll camera, so it's very short time of shooting. It's expensive. And of course, at the time, I had 23 years of no producing, self-produced films, no grants, stuff like that. So it's very limited in terms of how I shoot because it was very precise, not to expand on filming for hours and hours. It's also, I learned sound thanks to the Bolex because in a way it doesn't record sound. So I would spend a lot of time recording stories, a lot of time just eating and telling stories, recording stories, and also recording sound that would characterize the person, the film portrait. If the person was Mike Kuchar, then I would record a lot of sounds that was linked to his life, and also the collection of records of music that this person has was very important. So a mix of these three things plus creating sounds like Foley's art, that I would do at home was another way to create sound, which was a sort of landscape of making editing of sound. And then on the side, I would just spend time with the person, and from the story, I could imagine sort of a tableau vivant. Since I came from painting, I would often create a set, like a movie set, where I would put the character in it. And from the story they told me, I would put them into performance, into the set. So they came from documentary to fiction. In a way, it started this way to go from painting to film also.
For this first film, you were alone there, or did you have someone?
I was always alone. I mean, most of the films I was alone, which I didn't think about any other way anyway. Later on, I had friends who would sometimes help me when there was like a film shoot which required many people. But I do the camera, the editing, the sound, the costume, the sets, and all these things. But it was kind of a normal way to approach filmmaking for me because I hadn't learned any other way. I just had to find very clumsy, sometimes horrible sound, sometimes horrible camera. Everything was falling apart, but it doesn't matter. It was the way I learned and it's the way I could make film. And I learned along the way of making how to construct. Also, at the beginning, I edited on film. So I had a Steenbeck, and I had to cut film and cut the sound on magnetic tape, which was hell. I hated it. It wasn't for me because, for example, I made a film on Tony Conrad, a musician, and there was 5 layers of films because I made a lot of special effects of superimposition. So I had to do like 5 layers film. It was hell for me. It was like not done for my brain. So I was very happy when computers came to edit and I could mix things, go back and forth, cut and recom. But it was a really great lesson to actually learn this way. You made a choice and it was the choice and you couldn't always go back and forth. So it was actually a really good way to learn filmmaking.
So for many years, you actually met a lot of people, artists, filmmakers, musicians, and you entered the world, basically.
Yeah, I mean, often there were collaborations because a lot of the artists that I filmed were always making work, so I would be involved in helping them making work while I was also shooting my own film, and they would collaborate with me. So it was a two-side things, and it would take sometimes 5 years, 7 years to make a film with them. And sometimes I would make films between that time that would be a one-day film, like a performance film or a music video or something that was much more spontaneous and often shot on the roof of New York City because the roofs are the best movie sets when you have no money. It's like a wide plane of space where you can do anything and the light is great and you don't need lights. So they were often shot on rooftops, a lot of the films. And today there's a lot of screenings called a rooftop screening actually in New York because it still remains amazing places to make films or show films.
So when you shoot those films, those more improvised films, how do you manage to do that? Do you have like a luggage that you take with you full of props and full of elements?
I would prepare things. Like, for example, I did one called Slap the Gondola, which was on a boat. And it was an abandoned boat where a lot of young musicians would live, punk artists. And it was a sort of musical. I had set up a lot of props and the space was cleaned up. And it was a big boat which was on the Gowanus Canal. It was the toilet of New York City, so literally it looked very inelegant, but the boat was amazing. That's where we shot for one day, where I set up the costumes. I told everyone to come. I cooked for a whole week, so people could eat and have fun all day and spend a wonderful day. That's all that mattered to me. And then I would just take them, and I had choreographed different scenes. And so I would just go and shoot all the things I had designed while they were having a really great time. And there was a fish fight and many things during that boat. So I would always set up something very specific for myself, not tell anyone what they would do. They just come and they were happy to have a good day. And then they would perform for me during the day the different exercises of the scenes.
Not all are performers. Some were also
film
friends
portraits. None of them are actors. But they had great personalities, great bodies, great way of looking. I knew them. I knew how they moved. I knew how they danced. I knew how their faces looked. So this is why I invited those people and not others to be on the set. So they are in many of the films also. You find them over and over and over.
And did they know each other before?
It's also part of what the underground in New York is. It's like when I talked about the Anthology Film Archive, a lot of the people would meet and know each other and watch films together and do expanded cinema at night and go to the same music concerts. And so it was kind of a big crowd of a family of friends who would also always be creating outside of the commercial side of cinema. So they would very collaborative, very supportive, because there was no money. So there was a lot of generosity and a lot of sharing and helping with each other, which was in a way very joyous also, because there was no competition. It was another spirit.
In this specific film, Slap the Gondola, I think it's the first appearance in your work of Genesis Purridge. Can you maybe also tell a little bit how you met?
Genesis was the inventor of industrial music, a very important artist in England, born in England, and then escaped England after a big scandal show, in a way, against the Queen of England. He was, and she ended up in America with another band called Psychic TV. And I met Genesis when I went to a concert, and it was a concert where I went to see Alan Vega, a musician with a band called Suicide. And the third part of the concert was Genesis, who was reciting poetry with a third band she had, where a guy was playing music with a saw on a machine. It was very experimental. And I loved her voice. Her voice was completely amazing to me. And as things goes, the next day I went to an art opening, and there were so many people. And I'm quite small. I was pushed around in the crowd and walked on the foot of one person, which was Genesis. So I turned around to excuse myself, and it was Jen with all her gold teeth. And she said, "Hi, who are you?" And so I said, "Well, I saw you yesterday. You were wonderful," and blah, blah, blah. And she said, "Come to my home next week. I would love you to come." I was like, "Okay." And in New York, I never thought twice. I would always say, "Yeah." And it was the adventure of meeting someone new. And I worked at her door, and there opened Jay, her wife, who looked exactly like her at the time. So I was quite confused. And they were a married couple for 15 years, and their artwork was to exchange parts of their bodies to look alike and to become one crazy art project, to become one union person called the Pandrogyny, and to have no sex. No, it was just to become one person while they were doing music, artwork. I mean, it's someone who worked with William Burroughs, Derek Jarman, who had very important influence in many artists. And they asked me, could you come with us next week on a music tour on a band in Europe? And I was working full-time at the time programming films, and I asked for a holiday for a week, which was the only 1 week of the year that I could take. And I took films, and I went to Europe with them, and I spent 1 week in their bus. And that was the beginning of a 7-year film shoot with the band, but with Genesis and Lady J, which became the first feature film. First, I thought it would be a film about music and music band, but it was quite boring very quickly because it's very repetitive to film a band backstage, eating sandwich and rehearsing. And then suddenly I saw there was this amazing love story to tell, so it became really a film about creation and love.
This is Neil Andrew Megson. He's a boy. This is Genesis Briar Purridge, and she has no idea what she is. Well, you know how it is. You fall madly in love with somebody, and there's this moment where you just want to consume each other, not be individuals anymore. We wanted to pursue that, not just talk about it, but live it. I was living in California with my 2 children. This was my band. We opened up a hole in reality. We smashed a hole through rock and roll. Once in a while, I would come to New York and stay with the dominatrix. I was lying on the floor, and I could see through the doorway this very beautiful woman. Dear universe, if you find a way for me to be with this woman, I'll stay with her forever. Hi, sweetie, bye. It began as very romantic. instead of having children, what if we made ourselves the new person? And so we started to have cosmetic surgeries to look more like each other. We both got breast implants together and woke up next to each other, holding hands. Oh, look, it's our angelic bodies.
So you spent 7 years working on this film, which is your first feature film. When did you meet?
In
Genesis?
2006.
And then you were like invited to their place.
It was a real collaboration in the sense that they had chosen me in a way, and I just said yes. I mean, they left me pure freedom, so there was no restriction in terms of what I wanted to film and how, and make them perform also. So I would be invited to their home anytime, so I would film their daily life a lot, but also record a lot of stories. And from the stories, I would research and go to their archive, which was immense, because they had worked with William Burroughs. There was a lot of letters, a lot of posters, a lot of artwork. And then also they would tell me when there was a specific event that they were going to do, or to make me part of it. Or I was invited to all the rehearsals for concerts. And also they had a basement where the archives was. I would set up some little scenes where I would do again some backdrops, sets and props and costumes, and I would invite them, Genesis mainly, to perform, to do some specific performance for me, which was more fictional and more playful in a way, and that was integrated into the more documentary side of the film.
Indeed, I think it really takes its whole depth in this film, your way of navigating between the real and the fiction, navigating between the life and the imagination also of the people that you film. So you're part of their life in a way as well.
Completely. Yeah, and it remains after the films also.
Yeah.
But for me, the artifice, what is completely invented, the imagination, is sometimes stronger than the documentary side of things. When you set up like a sort of fictional space where the characters can let go and perform or tell a story, sometimes they become much more personal because they let go of having to tell something that is true. In a way, they told their stories. I don't know if it's a true story, but it's their stories. I'm not looking for the truth. And the artificial side of filmmaking for me is sometimes more personal and more true than just documenting what is happening. And they were also mixed media artists. I mean, they were collage their bodies, and in a way I was collaging their lives and collaging the sound. And that's really where I learned what collage meant in terms of music and sound and images. And in a way, that film is a real collage, just like the subject of the film.
So you collect also a lot of elements, may it be, as you said, text or images or film. How do you work within this big amount of elements, of artistic
elements? The big amount is editing. It's like having a pile of nothingness and making it into something, and that's one of my favorite moments also, is to spend a year really listening, writing down all the interviews, the story, and then cutting pieces, ordering. Because coming from painting, in a way, I think I learned to love collaging, and in a way, for me, editing is like pure collage. You can create whatever you want. Make a film good or make a film bad by the editing is the moment where it takes shape, it comes to life. I wish I had been a musician, but in a way, editing is the moment where you can become musical with images and musical with the sound, and you orchestrate the rhythm of everything. And I think it's very close to composing music to me.
She basically said, "Does that mean I've got to call you mummy now?" And the youngest one said, "You mean you spent all that money on breasts when you could have bought me a new car?"
I feel as though I found my soulmate.
I just want to just take you and just swallow you up. You and me just be one fabulous moment of being in love.
I've been saying change, 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 change for all my life, and yet people don't want me to change.
I just want to be remembered as one of the great love affairs of all time. That's it.
Yeah, when you work this material, do you show it to the people with whom you work, or
Never.
is it something that you keep for yourself?
Genesis saw things shot during 7 years, and also, I mean, I had no money for a long time. There were like 30 rolls of films in my fridge which had not been developed because I had no money to process it. And then I would get a grant and hope that the image were still there and process it, and it was there. You know, it goes like this, but I would never show them because I didn't even think of it. There was a pact in a way that was made when you meet someone and you make a film. That is, you agree in a way to, the trust is there. And so I needed that time alone to compose the film, and then they would see it at the end.
You showed it to them, and how did they react to the film?
At that time, Lady J passed away, so the film was made in homage to Lady J. And Jen came at home and she watched it, and I was shaking completely. I mean, I didn't know what she would think. It was quite a strong personality also. And she cried and she said, "I'll follow you anywhere." And so for 2 years, we really did a lot of moments of touring or concerts with the film together.
Yeah, because I guess those moments that you spend with them were really very intense. I mean, you must have lived a lot of things together.
Sometimes really hard things. Jen was a very, very intense person. That's also why I loved her. But they tested me a lot to see what my limits were and how I would resist to it and how I would make work with it. And of course, there was moments I had no idea they were taking drugs. I mean, I was so naive drinking Coca-Cola. I had no idea that why they were sleeping a lot or they were ill a lot was because they were taking heroin. I think that's what saved me in a way. But I think because we were so different and so far apart that it is why it worked so well. But there were very hard moments where I was wondering why I was doing this and working full-time on the side and doing many other things with the Cine Club and other friends. They were very tough moments because you're so intimate with them that, of course, you go in their life. Like Lady J passed away during the shoot, and I stopped filming because I didn't want to take advantage of a moment where the artist died, and I didn't know if I should continue or not the film, so I stopped. So I took care of Jen, like many other people. And then Jen called me and said, "You have to finish the film for Jay. She wanted this film." So then I started another year to compose the film without Jay. It was all these steps where you have to go through and hold on.
And would you say that this film changed the way you approached cinema, the way you approached your next films?
I mean, I had no idea I was doing a feature film. I had no ideas it would be shown. I was not shown. I did many short films during the time I was shooting for 7 years. So I never stopped exploring filmmaking because I don't know how to be with people if I don't have a camera. I'm bored. I don't really know how to... I'm always more comfortable with a camera than just sitting there, like here. And filming things or filming people is a way to be active for me and to look through the lens. I could never think of someone taking over the camera for me. I have to be behind the camera. So I think I'm always exploring, and we're in a short film festival. I made many short films during the time of the feature. I had no idea it would be a feature. And of course it did change a lot of things for me because suddenly the film was shown in festivals, yet I was working full-time and I couldn't travel with the film. I didn't go to the festivals much. The film went on its own. Jen went. But it did change something in terms of giving it suddenly a credential, like giving it a value to what I was doing secretly or alone on my side. It allowed me to have more grants also.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to say you had a prestigious grant in Berlin and with the
Guggenheim grant, and then the DAD in Berlin, and that's how I arrived in Europe.
Exactly.
In 2013.
Yeah. How do you feel? What do you do? 23 years in the US and suddenly you're back.
It was horrible. I mean, I thought I would never leave New York, and this was home, and this is still home. And then I arrived in Berlin. It was March. It was snowing. There was no one I knew, and I had 2 suitcases. I was like, why did I do this? And why am I here? And everyone around me was telling me, no, Marie, you never left New York. You have to see what artists do in Europe, and you have to maybe connect with your family and see how it is also to get more support and maybe grow in what I was doing. So I thought it was very important for me to find ways to keep making work, but to not limit myself, which it was limiting in a way, in a very underground cinema, because there's no money. You can repeat yourself easily. And I really wanted to explore more. And that's where I was able to go back to art making, which was very great. After 15 years, I could go back to doing drawings and show. And also I found a producer to make the second feature film, which was, of course, like tiny money, but I was supported by someone who believed in me and accompanied me in a different way of making films, which ended up in Cannes. So it was a different way, a different road, but it was a very good jump, actually.
And so the second film, Cassandro the Exotico, that you shot in Mexico, was also a long research
7
process.
years.
7 years again.
I don't know, it's always 7 years, 72 minutes, I don't know.
And during that time, you also continued to make short films as well, of course.
I'll show you Cassandro. As we say in French, merde, it means break your leg.
No, we don't say break your leg.
No?
Charlie, say good luck.
He's a lucha libre wrestler from Juarez, so it's the border of Texas, El Paso and Juarez, which is one of the hardest border city. And Cassandro is a gay wrestler, which is a category in wrestling, which is like boxing. It's like the national sport. It's like football in France. And very popular, but gay people are not accepted in the normal league. They always have to fight. They're not wearing a mask. They're not hiding their person. And their hair and their costumes, their makeup is great values. But he's an incredible athlete. I mean, he was world champion 3 times. He's like a crazy guy. He's no fear. And when I met him while I was touring with the Ballad of Genesis and Lady J in Los Angeles. And he was doing a show with passing wrestlers from Mexico City to the US with legal papers, which was very rare because a lot of them were paid illegally and sometimes not paid. And Cassandro has always fought for the group of wrestlers who were always, again, the outsiders. And when I met him, it was also one of those moments where he just grabbed me I was with my Bolex camera, and he said, come, and he allowed me to film something he was doing, and that's how we met. And then we met again in Mexico City many times, and then he invited me to his home in El Paso, Texas. And that's how the film started. During that time, I moved to Europe, but I would be very close with him. And the film took another 7 years to make on my own, again, a shooting. This moment, it was wonderful. It was the first time I also was able to work, thanks to the producer, with the editor, which I never allowed anyone to edit with me. I didn't even know what that was. And for the first time, I worked with Ael Vega, a wonderful film editor. And it was great to be side by side with someone who had much more, sort of more narrative way of approaching editing, and mixing that for me with a more punk way of cutting sound and image, the way I was always doing.
She's also the editor of Mati Diop.
Mati Diop, for the last film that was in Cannes. Atlantique, thank you. And many films of Gabriela Brentas. And she has a very sensitive touch. I was able to come with all my footage and sound with no story and have one in mind, but then build it from scratch and really build a story with Aël slowly, like knitting together. And I learned a lot from her, and I learned a lot from being finally accompanied also along the shooting, which was very precious, actually.
It was also another step, because for this one you also asked more money to produce it, or at least
I mean, I never asked money. I hope there is money
with the producer. No, I mean you.
It was it was really not easy at all. I mean, we made the film with 150,000 euro for 7 years. So thank God I do the camera and I do all the stuff, because it's one part for every role. But it was supported. It was like, there was the first time I also did what they call post-production. I had never had sound mix. I had never had color grading, editing. So it was another step that I loved, and of course continued that way after, with the same freedom of the way I approach filming, being alone, doing the camera work, not being very traditional in my way of approaching filmmaking, actually.
How did it work to be with Cassandro? Did he call you as well, and you took the plane and went to Mexico, or was it more planned?
It was a little further away, but I mean, for 3 years before I met the producers, I lived still in New York, so we started a little bit, because I used to go to Mexico City a lot, program in a film festival called Distrital, where I would bring a lot of French films to Mexico City. So that was a way to see Cassandro more easily. And then I would plan my trips. And in a weird way, we did a lot of Skypes. That was the beginning of Skype. And I didn't know I would record the Skype, because I wanted to remember everything he said, to think about the filmmaking. And in a strange way, Aël, when she started the editing, I had put this in the garbage, and she put it out of the garbage and found a way that this was the way to tell the story and our relationship. So the film starts with a Skype between me and Cassandro. So that was also a strange way to make films from a distance that became part of the making of the editing and the film itself also.
Hola! How have you been?
I'm okay, and you?
Where is Cassandro?
Ok, c'est parti.
A lot of people see me as an exotico leader, as an exotico goddess. That's why I'm called the Liberace of Lucha Libre. But I've been through a lot.
When you screened the film, you also invited Cassandro for like shows with him. How did that happen?
It was really wonderful for him, because he came from a very underprivileged life and very tough life, and he would support his whole family. So in a way, when I could create with coordination with, for example, La Fondation Cartier, or like museums or places that had money, would bring him and pay him and bring 3 or 4 other luchador. So he would pay for them to continue doing their work, and we would reset a ring in the museum, which was really strange, because suddenly you had like people with ties and, you know, art world style, watching like the most violent, crazy lucha libre world. And I love that kind of pushing the boundaries of also how to look at the work, because for him that's his art, and it was always wonderful for him, but for us also.
So your art, your way of again moving from cinema, film to other places of art.
So this came not that long ago. It's like I had left the art school without ever showing. And then 4 years ago, I was in Toulouse in the festival, and a woman came to me as I was there and said, I saw one of your drawings and I love what you do. And do you have a show? And I said, no. Her name is Anne Barrault, and she has an incredible art gallery in Paris. I love that woman, and she works a lot with autodidact artists, and also a lot with comic artists, Topor, Art Brut, also artists. And in a way, it fitted perfectly for me. And it allowed me to go back to actually do painting, drawings. Because when I shoot films also, I shoot a lot, but then in the editing it gets really reduced, and I have a lot of footage that I don't use, but that I love, I care a lot about, and I never throw it. So I was able to use all this footage to also create some kind of movie box and do other films with the discarded footage from feature or short films to become miniature films that I would use into installations, movie boxes, to recreate new work. And here you see this movie box where people have to peep into a hole to see films. I use a lot of different lenses where people have to look at the film through different lenses that I use during the shoot. So they're always related to how I make films and how you look at the films. So each box has a world. One has feathers, one is with my hair. And this was an installation done it's very, very large, and it's done in oil paint on rice paper. This woman is pregnant with a lot of film cameras and film stills, and she gives birth to movies that are projected from a film on a loop 16 millimeter projector. It's projected on the drawing. So the film 16 millimeter, which is very close to the way I do painting, is also projected on the drawing themselves. So she gives birth to a real live movie. So these are different portraits of people that I work with who are often musicians, filmmakers. Here you have like a table with cakes, and some of my films were shown on cakes, projected on a cake, because there was a movie called Eat My Makeup where I did a pie fight on a rooftop in New York, so I decided to show the film on cakes, which started rotting after a month in the gallery and changing shape, because you also see that people come by and touch the cake to check if it's real. So the film starts changing shape as well. This is Félix Cubine, one of the films you will see, and these are the outtakes where I worked with animal for cinema. And we had no money to pay for an animal trainer. It's very expensive and it takes many months. So I met this wonderful animal trainer, Jean-Philippe. He said, I give you for free my animals for 1 day. So, which means you can actually approach them, touch them, do things, but they are not going to obey you in terms of, I wanted Félix, who is a musician, to do orchestration with owls, so they would all do the same thing at the same time. None of them did. Then we had a tiger, and the tiger was not doing what I wanted.
So you had the animal, but no one to help you?
He was there on the side,
but he wouldn't interrupt.
To train an animal for cinema, you need many months to tell what they're going to do in the scene, and then he trains them to do what you wish for the scene. There you could, of course, be safe and be close and touch and all this, but they wouldn't know what you wanted to do. So we just improvised. Animals are stronger than humans. They do what they want. So every time I have a friend coming at home, I do their portraits. And it takes like 10 minutes to make. It's called monotype. It's on plexiglass, and I put oil paint and I put rice paper, which is very thin Japanese paper. And I do the drawing looking at the person, but it's upside down and I don't see the result. So it's almost like filmmaking when I shoot with 16 millimeter and don't have the result of what I shoot right away. So there's something in the same excitement of not seeing the result and also exaggerating and playing with the person that I always set up with a prop, or the person has to bring a prop.
And so maybe going back to film shooting, can you tell us about your encounter with Félix Cubine?
Félix is a German musician and composer from Hamburg, kind of like a nerd genius who can compose from experimental to pop to orchestration and do a lot of radio shows, sound experiments. And one of the happiest person I've ever met also. He's totally inhabited. And I met Felix in New York when I was working there, and he did a lot of the music for a filmmaker that I love in New York who does animation and painting called Martha Colburn, and he did a lot of the music for her films. So I met Felix there years ago, and he said, the day you come back in Europe, I want to work with you. So I showed my films in 2013 when I came to Berlin at the Hamburg Cinematheek, and he was there waiting for me outside. And we became very close friends, and we started making a film together for 3 years. And then I met a producer from Eche Film who saw this photo and said, okay, I produce it. I was so surprised, and it was wonderful. And we got a grant, and we continued filming for 2 years. And we were able to finish the film, which was a wonderful trip.
Maybe this is the good time to move to your new projects.
Yeah.
So you're working now on 2 different projects.
So maybe I'll show you an excerpt of a film that has been going on since 2006, which had a long story, and I stopped for many years. I lost the film, I got back the film, and finally I'm starting again to finish the film after so many years. And it's a performer that I met while I was filming with Genesis Purage in 2006 in Brussels when we were on tour. The first week I met them, and her name is Peaches. She's a singer and performer, and she saw me filming with the Bolex Genesis and said, I want you to come to my dressing room and film too. So I did. I had no idea who she was. And then I saw her on stage with a lot of energy. And we remained in touch for all these years. And then when I came to Berlin, she lives in Berlin, I was able to work with her much closer. And then something else happened. I had to stop the film, and I'm starting it again. So I just edited a little piece to show you the film going on. First time I saw you was in Brussels when I was with Genesis. So
yeah, and then Impeach My Bush to my
Exactly.
third album,
Yeah.
so that must have been like
2006.
2006.
I have
Yeah.
it on the reels.
Yeah.
And it was a very it was the first time I saw you on stage, and I was like, wow, this energy is blasting the space. This is what I edited last week to pass oral for the CNC next week. So
fingers crossed.
Let's see.
You were one of the first ones to discover this new work that Marie is working on at the moment.
We really need to finish the film, and then I'm working on a fiction, the first one, a musical, and that will take a long time, and it's more traditional maybe, but maybe not, I mean my own way, with actors. And then another more documentary, mixed medium film on a band called Performance and Music, band very important to me, and I think a lot of the people who are from the underground, don't know if you know the Residents. They are a band who are 50 years old today. So they've been around for a long, long time, and they've invented and broke many grounds of performance and character inventions and collaborations, and they're always masked. Nobody knows who they are. Nobody has ever seen their face. So it's also interesting because they created this masked performance from the beginning, not to be stars, not to be, so that everyone in the band was equal in a way. Nobody needs, and they have a private life which no one knows who they look like. So I met them without a mask in Bourges like 3 years ago around the lemon chicken dish that they had cooked while they were in residency, and I was in residency. And we became really close, and they invited me. They live in San Francisco, and they invited me to their world. So now I have to find a way to make the film, which is not easy because they're masked. And to make a film that could be emotional and intimate when you can't reveal the face of the people, and they have also invented many other characters for themselves, is a tricky one. But I'm up for the challenge, and I'll just show you 2 minutes. And the person you will see without a mask is the manager of the band who does all the cover of all the albums, because they have made 1 million albums, so he's not masked.
Someone saw a strange amount of moisture on her lips, and it was also seen upon her arms and on her hips.
You also teach at the School of Art with me, the School of Art in Geneva. This is also something that you do. You also teach them how to work with the Bolex camera and how to use
to
it
make films.
To make films.
I mean, I see Saro here. I think Ivan is here, and I really love teaching because it's also a way of passing on and also getting back also what they're up to, young people, also what they're thinking, what they're making, where they come from. There's a very generous way of giving and getting also, and being open, not teaching how you make films, but teaching to want to make films. And that's something else. And it's a very intense process, very psychological also, but I really love it. And I hope I do a good job. But I'm kind of proud because they're showing their own films here, so it's wonderful.
Thank you very much. I would like to end this discussion masterclass, we can call it masterclass indeed, by some words that Genesis wrote about the filming of your collaboration. You probably already heard it. It was I found it in a magazine. So she says, Marie's technique is very revolutionary. Most documentaries, and I've been in a lot of documentaries. I've been in Joy Division, Brian Geisen, Burroughs, Derek Jarman documentaries, all kinds of stuff. But they're all the same. They sit you down and they stick a camera at you, and it's just your head, and you're just doing blah, 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 blah. And it's very ordinary. There's nothing very interesting and radical happening. But with Marie, there's animation, and she gets you to wear the most ludicrous costumes and do these bizarre things that at time you're doing them and you're thinking, what the hell has this got to do with my life? But when it's all assembled, it's like Fellini meets documentary. It's a very new, radical way of making documentaries. And quite honestly, we think that what Marie does and the way she does, it will be the template for the future. She's totally unique, very deep, with a very great sense of joy and emotions below her humor. I wouldn't have been able to say it that way, but it's true. It really, I think it really describes your work and your way of working with the people. So thank you very much for bringing all this to life, and thank you for this wonderful conversation.
Thank you all so much.
And see you at the screening at 2.